Hi there, this is Pastor Jeff. I'm here to give an update, and this one may be just a little bit longer than my usual ones because I have something on my heart. I've been in devotions and also in some of my discipleship groups, and I've had a passage that's come up, and it really speaks relevantly to the crazy things we're going through and this amazing times we're facing. And something popped out that touched an area of concern as a pastor that I have for just about anybody who tries to follow Jesus. Let me read this passage to you. It's out of Mark chapter 4, starting verse 3. Jesus says, "Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it did not have much soil, and immediately it sprang up, since it had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. And other seeds fell into good soil and produced grain, growing up, increasing, and yielding 30-fold and 60-fold and 100-fold. Now, I read that to you because something I came across this week really touched me and stirred up the concern that there is inside, I believe, every shepherd or every pastor or anyone who cares anything about anyone on the journey to follow Jesus. And it was this, that ever since the pandemic, 2 out of 3 normal churchgoers are now not attending church. Now, that's both in person and online. And it really matches the blowback that I've been witnessing in spiritual lives and in personal lives since this pandemic has hit. We see marriages that are falling apart. I see teenagers that are experiencing depression. Suicide is on the rise. We see people who have depended upon drug and alcohol groups to stay off their habitual destructive lives, just fall right back in. People also with health struggles have not been able to get their health needs met. But in a basic sense, people are beginning to die spiritually. Not completely, but more so now than I've seen in a long time. And it matches this in many ways. And I don't know where you are, and I think that the parable asks the question at the end, not what kind of soul you are permanently, but what are you today? But it's the pastor's heart in me to say something that since 2 out of 3 normal churchgoers, not people that might go to church, but these are the people that would call themselves attenders, but 2 out of 3 of those are now not attending. And that's not even online or in person. And the shepherd's heart in me wants to make the call to some, not all, but to some, to say it's time for you to come back to church. And I could say that, we have been blessed with a huge room. We are about, 40 to 50 people. Guidelines allow us to 100 right now, so there's room. If you bring your kids, you can have your kids sit with you. I think it's important. I think it's a great trait to try to teach kids. We have side rooms if kids get unruly. We want to hand out drawing and coloring papers. That's what I did when I went to church with my parents. In fact, I think that sitting with my parents for an hour probably taught me a lot of life lessons. Learning to sit still probably taught me how to get a job. So I just think it's really important. And plus, I think coming back to church is okay, even if you've been trying to stay away from groups, because guidelines for social distancing are beginning to normalize out there. And we go to large group places, and we know how to be responsible now. So, but like I said, this plea isn't for everyone. It's for just some, not all. But listen, my first plea is for those of you, if you have been withering inside, you know who you are. You need to come back to church. And you need to come back to church now. It's important. You can't suffer your spiritual life. You know how to be responsible. You should come back. Some of you shouldn't. Of course, obviously, if you're sick, I haven't really met anyone yet who's had COVID-19. I've met a number of people who've gotten different sicknesses since then. But this is a no-brainer. Look, if you're sick, the responsible thing for you to do is to stay at home. But the rest of us, and the reasons why people aren't coming to church, there's a large spectrum. And believe me, I'm like you. I've heard them all. I mean, there's people and arguments that have checked out of church. And I can make an argument for some of you that you should come back as well. And so if you're one of these people, I just want you to know you should come back if, number one, you know how to be responsible. I trust people to be responsible. Responsibility and care and concern and being careful is a real wise thing to live every day as a Christian. You know how to be responsible. You can come back. For those of you who maybe won't come to church, if they have to wear a mask and say, I'm not going to go to church if I have to wear one. Listen, even if your science disagrees and you disagree with other people's science and you have your reasons why you don't have to wear a mask, listen, you can, for the sake of others, choose to wear a mask. However, if you choose to come to church and you won't wear a mask, I want you to know, for those of you who also won't come to church, if everyone isn't wearing a mask, look, even if your science disagrees, you also can choose to come and not judge others that you might see not wearing a mask. They might have a reason. They might have health conditions that prevent them from breathing with a mask. Or they may just be honestly, peacefully, and lovingly protesting, which means they just have a different set of science than you. And that's okay. Look, we're not going to make you feel judged if you come in here and you are wearing a mask or if you're not wearing a mask. But we will ask you to be responsible. And I just want to say one condition. Look, either end of the spectrum, if you come here, I'm going to ask you not to judge. There'll be no moral shaming, no virtue bullying from either end of the spectrum. And whatever science you have, it's just not going to be allowed. The perfect condition for being a Christian is this tense environment that we're in right now. And it's strange that it's all because of a tiny invisible virus. I mean, who would have thought? And this invisible pressure, I believe, that we as Christians have to get this wrong and not love one another, I think it's the actual dark work that's behind the scenes, that's really the invisible dark force that I think is tearing people apart. And it's disrupting spiritual lives, and it's destroying the fabric of our faith and our society. At the end times, Jesus warned. He said, at the end, at that time, many people will fall away from faith. They'll wither up. And then he says, and they will hate each other. And it's just so ironic that this is all because of a little virus. But it can't happen here. And I think you could come. The bottom line is this. I believe church is essential. And most of you know this. I mean, I'm not telling you something new. For some, it's time to come back. Especially if you're withering inside, I'm talking to you. And we trust you. You can be responsible. Wear a mask if you can. And if you have reasons why you can't wear a mask, you should know you won't be judged. And we don't want you to judge others. That just won't happen here. But we do want you to be responsible. For a few others, I understand it's perfectly fine. Stay home. It's okay. Stay and connect in the small group connection network that's coming up. Or watch online. That's great. But for all, I know most of you agree with me that church is essential. Journey will always be a place where you will find grace and you can be gracious. Where you will find humility in people and you can also be humble. Where you can find love and you can be loving. And it's a place where we will all learn to follow Jesus together. There's my case. There's my plea. I urge you, consider coming back, especially if you're withering and dying inside. And I think all of us will learn how to set minor differences aside, trust the Lord, and love one another. God bless. Have a great week.